Hey everyone, and welcome back to my channel, Transcendence. My name is Christian Ramirez, and on today's episode, we're going to be covering the case of Eben Alexander. He was a medical doctor for 25 years, and he had his own near-death experience when he was diagnosed with a severe case of bacterial cerebral meningitis. I knew that I was entertaining concepts that many in my field would consider beyond the pale, if not outright heretical. Some might even suggest that I let go of my inquiry rather than commit professional suicide by sharing such a radical tale. As Dr. Joseph and I had come to agree, my brain was severely damaged by a near-fatal case of bacterial meningoencephalitis. The neocortex, the part modern neuroscience tells us must be at least partially active for conscious experience, was capable of creating or processing anything even remotely close to what I experienced, and yet I did experience it. To quote Sherlock Holmes, "When you have excluded the impossible, whatever remains, however improbable, must be the truth." Thus, I had to accept the improbable. This very real experience happened, and I was conscious of it, and my consciousness did not depend on having an active brain. Eben Alexander, MD, living in a mindful universe. Eben Alexander was a neurosurgeon for 25 years. He believed that the brain is what created consciousness from physical matter. He also believed that the physical world is all that exists. Eben Alexander's case is significant because he had severe gram-negative bacterial meningitis. It took about 3.5 hours to go fully into coma. He was in the coma for about 7 days. At the beginning of the week, he had about a 10% chance of survival. Towards the end of the week, he had a 2% chance of survival. The area of the brain that was being attacked was his neocortex. That's the part of the brain that makes us human. Modern neuroscience tells us that the neocortex must be at least partially active in order for an individual to have a conscious experience. And in this instance, Eben's lobes, all 8 lobes of his brain, were actually being ravaged by bacteria.
So I was in deep coma the whole time. They had CT and MRI scan data showing that all 8 lobes of my brain were affected. No part was spared. And that's why to have an extraordinarily rich experience, far more real than anything I'd ever experienced in my life, completely violates everything I
So something I really wanted to point out for this case is that Eben Alexander didn't believe in God or anything like that. He was a very scientifically minded person. He believed that the brain created consciousness out of physical matter. He also believed that the physical world, this was all that existed. So this is another reason why I wanted to pull this case in to show you guys, just because this is someone who had that belief system in place. It's another reason why I found that fascinating, that someone can go through this experience and have a complete shift in their point of view. And you'll find that to be very common in the near-death experience. People will have all kinds of belief systems in place. Some don't believe in God, some believe in God. And what I find most fascinating is those who actually have a religion like Christianity or something, for example, will end up dropping the religion after the near-death experience. They will also lose all fear of death. They'll have a greater understanding of the universe as well as themselves.
And I was rescued by a spinning white light, perfect pure white light with fine white and gold filaments that open up like a rip in the fabric around me into a lovely gateway valley, a perfect ultra-real valley, lush with life. And I was moving up through it because I was a speck of awareness on a butterfly wing with millions of other butterflies. Lots of souls dancing below us, joy and mirth. And beside me on the butterfly wing, a beautiful girl.
During his experience, he went into a gateway, beautiful gateway valley with souls flying around through the air, with music that he could hear, with a source where he could feel all unconditional love. You'll hear about that a lot when it comes to near-death experience stories. He talks about his experience starting off in a murky earthworm-eyed view, kind of maybe what he assumes his brain could only muster at the time, and then it opened up into a beautiful gateway valley with him being on a butterfly wing and a centered core where he could feel this unconditional love emanating. The woman on the butterfly wing was talking to him telepathically, giving him reassurances that everything would be okay, that he was loved, there was nothing to worry about. And It's interesting to hear that from a doctor and to see how that changed his perspective, especially since he thought that the physical world was all that existed. So what I'm going to do as well is include a link in the description below. That link is going to take you to a website where you can find the actual case report for Eben. You have 3 doctors who went over his case. There's a lot of big medical terms in there, but they're just pretty much explaining the seriousness of the issue, and they're also going into why this case is also so significant and how he shouldn't have had any kind of experience at all during his coma. His brain was being ravaged, the neocortex was being ravaged by bacteria, and he shouldn't have had any memory. Yet, when he describes his experience, he talks about how the reality in which he went into, the dimension he went into, was more real than this world. It was more real than this reality. It was ultra real. So when he actually describes this other dimension, this other realm, and he describes it as being more real than this world, more real than reality, you'll actually hear that across many different near-death experiencers and their stories. There's no words to describe what it's like over there other than to say that it's more real than this world. They're more conscious than they ever were in this reality. That's something else that you'll hear. So actually, after having the experience, when Eben came back, it blew everyone away. He had a miraculous healing, which really doesn't tend to happen with cerebral meningitis. He didn't remember who he was. His memories of who Eben was were gone. It took weeks to get that information back. Medical knowledge, who he was, his personal life, all of that. It took a very long time for that knowledge to come back to him. The only thing he could remember when he first came back was where he had just been. Filter theory, the modern scientific model that replaces the old production model. That would be that the brain produces consciousness out of physical matter. No one has gone anywhere with the old production model, and no one can even explain in the old model how the brain might even create consciousness. The model replacing it now is filter theory, which looks at the brain as a reducing valve or filter for consciousness. Kind of like how a radio receives a signal from somewhere else. Here's an analogy. You can study everything you want about the brain, and that would be like studying the display on your computer monitor. And yes, it's important to understand how that display works, but don't think that understanding all the workings of that display is going to explain what appears on the screen. The brain equals the display, and much deeper is the realm of the mind. So Eben likes to bring attention to what he calls filter theory. That theory in the scientific community explains that the brain is not what actually produces consciousness. The signal is coming from somewhere else, kind of like a radio. So when you have a radio, you know that even if you were to go inside the radio and look at the wires and everything like that, that's not where the actual signal is coming from. The signal is coming from someplace else. So the brain is similar in that effect. Quantum physicists have been trying to tell us for over 100 years that consciousness is fundamental to the universe, which is a very tough pill to swallow for the materialist scientists out there that say that physical matter is all that exists. And that's all for today, guys. I hope you enjoyed that snapshot of the Eben Alexander case. And please be sure to like, share, and subscribe. That always helps me out. It takes a lot of work to put these videos together. And I'll catch you guys on the next one.
But her thoughts came straight into my awareness. And these I share with all of you because they are important for all of us. This is the central message. You are deeply loved and cherished forever. There is nothing you can do wrong in that realm.